Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Film Study with 11 Warriors. I am Kyle Jones. Today, we are talking about Ohio State's 30-40-10 victory in West Lafayette last weekend. Now, I believe many of our viewers here might have been a little bit alarmed and a little surprised to see some of the feelings I had about this game when I appeared on the Dubcast earlier this week. We certainly went with the clickbait title, thanks George, in terms of using my unfiltered feelings, which I share with the team, typically not put out for display. But if you missed it, what I said was this was the most infuriating rewatch of the season. Now, what I mean by that, every Sunday morning after an Ohio State football game, I make a giant pot of coffee and dive right into the All-22 and really rewatch everything snap by snap many, many times over. Typically, it's one of my favorite things to do following a game. This past Sunday, not a particularly fun experience, at least when watching the Ohio State offensive line. Now, let's not lose sight of the bigger picture here. The defense dominated yet again, which is why we are not going to be speaking about Matt Patricia's unit in this video. I apologize for all the defensive fans out there. We're going to really focus on not just the offense, but particularly on the offensive line. So all my guard play enthusiasts out there, get ready. This video is for you. Now, what I want to talk about and highlight and really lean in on when I say this was infuriating, I'm not here to talk about and put, really fillet any specific players. I know there's been a lot of talk about Tegra Shabola in the right guard position. And as I told George on the Dubcast earlier this week, I don't believe this is the situation where it's as simple as just replacing the personnel and suddenly the problem is fixed. Now, anyone who's watched the Ohio State Buckeye run game this season probably knows that it could be a lot better, leaving a bit to be desired, especially compared to what we saw at the end of the year last year. Now, I think people are hoping that much like last season, where the run game really kind of struggled at times throughout the regular season, really, had some trouble rounding into form, especially as injuries hit that unit. They found another gear in the playoff. I'm sure some folks are just assuming the same will happen this year. I have reason for pause, and again, that's really what drove me to make some of these comments earlier this week. Now, I believe this is about preparation. We're going to get into why, but before we do that, let's really try to examine some of the issues that showed up when we put the tape on film. So let's jump into our first clip here, which is going to be a simple stretch play, right? This is a great example. When it's an outside zone, we get a handoff to Bo Jackson. Now, immediately you can see there's pressure. Jackson does a nice job of bouncing the play outside to avoid a loss, turns a loss into a couple yard gain. Now, when we look at the end zone view here, what we're going to show is, again, it's a simple outside zone. The back is aiming for the outside hip of the tackle. Everyone is stepping laterally. You're going to see that first step. They're all moving laterally. Nobody's gaining any ground as soon as the ball snapped. They're all moving to their left and trying to get on that gap. Now, the important one here is Sareveld and Montgomery, of course, because they're going to be double teaming that defensive end. They're going to work to that end, and once they're confident they've got him taken care of, somebody, whether that's Sareveld or Montgomery, the other is going to climb up to that middle linebacker. They're doubling, and this is a simple combination block we see all the time in zone plays. Very common, but should be repped a lot. Now, in this example, what we see, unfortunately, is Montgomery's looking the entire way up at the middle linebacker. Sareveld looks like he's expecting help from Montgomery. Montgomery never really gives him any, and that's going to allow some penetration that we saw right away. Again, this is just repetition. It's chemistry. It's expecting to get these inside moves from your opponent, and that has to do with scouting and preparation. Now, luckily, Jackson does a good job of bouncing the play outside and saving it from being a negative play, but this is just one of those things that you expect to happen when we're having a run game that's not getting off the ground. Now, one of the things that we saw last year in these situations, again, a lot of those types of snaps, those missed combination blocks, what we saw last year was Ohio State went to a lot of gap scheme. Now, what do we call gap scheme? Gap is really when you're man on man. There's a designed play. It's what you think of when you saw Vince Lombardi drawing a play up on the board. Now, what that means for Ohio State is it's going to be a lot of power counter sweep plays, right? And that involves a lot of pullers. And typically that should be easier for an offensive line to execute because it's very simple. You have a responsibility. You have a man, go block him. Now, unfortunately, Ohio State's had trouble with those concepts as well this season. So again, they're having trouble dealing with when defensive fronts, like what we saw against Purdue. Purdue threw a ton of different twists, stunts, blitzes at this unit. And again, changing the picture from what they show pre-snap to what's happening post-snap. And that's giving a lot of trouble to this offensive line. Now, why is that a problem? Well, that's preparation. Now, a team of Ohio State's caliber should expect a couple of wrinkles each week. Ryan Day talked about in his press conference that, they got some wrinkles they didn't expect. And of course, you're going to get a couple. Now, the issue is how often this happened. It was not just, there's no way that these could have all been unexpected wrinkles, and it draws some curiosity from the outside eye. Now, what's the example we're talking about here? Of course, let's show this counterplay. What we're going to have is we're going to have two pullers. The left guard, Luke Montgomery, and the tight end are going to come around while everyone else is blocking down, right? They're going to be blocking and trying to pinch and create a wall inside, while then you're going to have these two lead blockers come around. And why it's a man scheme, and you can see Montgomery's guy that he expects to block on when you draw it up on the chalkboard is that defensive end. He's going to kick him out and try to drive him into the opposite sideline. Now, the other puller in this instance, the tight end, Bennett Christian, he's looking at that outside linebacker. That's who he's eyed up from before the snap of the ball, right? He is now going to go kick that guy and drive him up to the second level. Great. Everyone should be blocked. That's how you draw it up on paper. The problem is Purdue doesn't want to play that way. They're running a little slant here, a stunt, where that defensive end is slanting inside, and the will linebacker is going to absolutely crash up to the outside and create that outside edge. Well, the other linebackers pull over. Now, what that means is that the tight end on the opposite side, Will Kazmarek, he's got to stay with that slanting defensive end and make sure that he doesn't penetrate in the backfield. So now you got a 2-on-1. Two guys are blocking one, which means there's going to be somebody unblocked. Now, Montgomery, he eventually comes and helps, and he gets his eyes up, and he's looking for 16. But that's who Bennett Christian thought he had. And so that's going to leave number 10 completely unblocked. And these types of mistakes where you have two guys on one guy, one defender, and then no blocker on the other, these are the types of issues that are leading to tackles in the backfield, tackles for loss, and blown up run plays. And these continually happen. Now, let's look at another example of this, right? This is something where Ohio State went into what we call a diamond formation, right? You can see this. This was what we saw against Penn State a lot, where you've got these two tight ends in the backfield. Now, the key here is I want to show Montgomery. Now, it's essentially a counter play with the two tight ends pulling again, but this is a combo block still, where Montgomery's going to help on the defensive tackle, and he's going to try, hopefully, to get up to 16. As soon as the ball is snapped, he's already looking at the middle linebacker, right? He's assuming that Austin Saravold, the tackle next to him, is going to take that defensive tackle slanting to his outside. So he's just like, great, I'm going to help. I'm going to get a hand on him, and I'm going to go to linebacker. The problem is there's two guys. The defensive end pinched. I think this might have even been a bust and maybe not a design play this way. But suddenly, Montgomery just leaves this guy because he assumes that Saravold's there. He just allows number 40, the defensive tackle, who line up directly across him, just to get in the backfield and penetrate, because he assumed that, again, the guy he's combination blocking with, Saravold, is going to take him. Saravold's got his hands full with somebody else, and we get a tackle for loss. This is, I should say, a good effort from West to not have a tackle for loss, but basically a stuffed run play. This is the kind of stuff that is sloppiness. These should be repped in practice. Now, granted, maybe that last one, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that was truly a busted play, and Purdue shouldn't have had two guys in one gap. But what we saw there just now was two offensive linemen that have played countless snaps together, both when you count practice all spring, all summer, and now into November. These are the types of September mistakes that you see and you can shrug off. We are in the middle of November. There's only a couple of regular season games left, with a team that likes to do a lot of this action up front looming on the horizon in Michigan, and a very good team that is going to absolutely scout their opponent well in Indiana, looming in the Big Ten championship, much less to say whoever they might see in the playoff. Now, maybe the most frustrating part about this is that this team was able to figure these things out as the game went on. Now, you might say that's great, good for Tyler Bowen, the coaching staff, to figure this out as they went on. But what concerns me a little bit is, why did it take midway through the game for them to figure this stuff out? And again, maybe that's just simply what we're talking about in terms of this is unexpected wrinkles that never showed up on tape, but I have trouble believing that. Now, what am I talking about here? What's an example? We're going to see the exact same play here. I'm going to show two examples of it. The first time Ohio State does not properly pick up a blitz, they come off the field, probably look at the film, and the next time they fix it and correct it, and they're able to spring a big run. So what do I mean here? Well, we've got a tight end in motion. Essentially, it's a lead sweep along the outside. Again, Ryan Day actually talked about this at his press conference. The receiver's going to crack on the safety, and the tight end's going to try to get up to that cornerback. They're actually going to trade, these responsibilities. He helps out on the end, but somebody comes unblocked, and the back basically gets stuffed. Good effort to try again, not to take a negative play for loss. We can see it from the end zone view. And what we have is we're going to get, the strong side linebacker, number 5, or probably the Will, I'm sorry. He's going to blitz through the A gap. He's not actually the issue here because Carson Hinsman's got his eyes up. He's going to pick him up. The issue is going to be number 16, that middle linebacker, because that middle linebacker is going to scrape over the top behind that blitz. He knows that because of that run blitz from number 5, nobody's going to be looking for him and expecting him to get over the top and essentially mirror the running back. And that's what happens. Saravold, he just seals down on his double team. He sees number 5, who he expected to climb up to and get, and just, stays on the first level defender. And that leaves 16 completely unblocked to go make this tackle, or at least get the first hit on the running back and eventually trip him up to go down. Later in the game, a couple possessions later, we get the exact same snap or the exact same play from Ohio State and the same blitz from Purdue, but this time Ohio State's able to spring it. Now, why were they able to spring it that second time around? Well, again, we get that motion from the tight end. We're going to get the same run blitz. Number 5 is going to blitz through that A gap. You're going to see similar movement where 16 is going to scrape over the top and essentially mirror Isaiah West, the running back. Now, as this action happens, again, Hinsman picks up the blitzer, but now Saravold's got his eyes up. He expects to see that scrape over the top, and he's able to eventually get off of that double team. He does enough to make sure Montgomery's got the double this time. They actually execute this well, and he gets enough of 16 right to spring Isaiah West on the outside. This is a great example of what happens when you make these types of adjustments in game, and that's terrific. However, Ohio State is the type of team that can't wait until the second half to make a lot of these adjustments. And that's, I think, the part that concerns me when I think about and trying to project where this team can go. It's only a matter of time until a team, whether it's Indiana or somebody they see in the playoff, is able to, stop the other parts of the offense, whether it's, be able to cover the passing game, or it might just be simply converting on a turnover. We saw that against Penn State, what can happen when an unexpected turnover in your own territory, what that can do to game flow. You're playing essentially with, you're playing left-handed intentionally here when you're coming into games and leaving these adjustments to be made. Now, part of those adjustments can also be schematic. Now, we saw that a lot last year with Chip Kelly, which was great. He always seemed to have, a different gadget, a different way to kind of solve some of these problems. If you notice the defense was doing one thing, he always had a trick up his sleeve. Obviously, Chip's in the NFL now, and as good of an offensive coordinator as Brian Hartline seems to be, and obviously what an incredible mind the real offensive coordinator, Ryan Day, seems to be, the issue here is that they haven't shown quite the same level of run game versatility, I should say. We've seen it in the passing game. We have not quite seen it in the run game, at least yet. But we saw a few answers baked in. Now, let's talk about what I'm saying. What do I mean here? This is a good example of a run play that we've got from Ohio State here. This is actually going to be an RPO, right? We got an RPO where it's split. We've got Brandon Ennis is going to come out on a screen pass, and then we're going to get a zone to the outside, just like the first snap I showed. But this time what we see is we're going to get a little bit of a pin and pull action. So while that defensive end crashes inside, just like the very first clip, what we're going to see this time is Montgomery's going to loop behind, right? So we had that defensive end crashing inside with number 10 scraping over. Montgomery's got his eyes on it, and he's just going to peel off and pin and pull around and take away number 10. Now, this is probably not something they call in the huddle. It's probably just an adjustment they make at the line. I also want to call out how much the backs helped here. This is a great cut from Bo Jackson, not only to cut up behind the initial block, but then to cut behind his blocking, the blocking of his receivers, who, again, were excellent in this game. So, again, adjustments were made. Some schematic probably in the huddle. Others were just simply adjustments they made on the sideline. This is another one that is purely schematic. Now, this is going to look like counter. We're going to get the pulling guard. And we're actually going to get the tight end in the backfield, Max Clare, look like he's pulling. Again, just like the second clip we showed, right? The offensive line's blocking down. We've got the guard pulling, right? And it looks actually like a read play. This looks like power read or counter read because Sand is actually reading number 23. Now 23 is going to squeeze down inside. He's going to try to attack the puller and try to disrupt that, just like we saw in the first one. But he's actually going to get, and then we're going to have 16 behind him who's scraping over. Again, think about that play we showed earlier just of counter. And this time we've got Jelani Thurman, who's split out as a receiver, cracking number 16. And he's actually going to take two guys out because it's man coverage and the corner's going to follow. But this is the other wrinkle, is this was actually a shovel pass. We all remember that from the Urban Meyer early days, right? This is a triple option where Sand can either hand it off or he can throw that little shovel to Claire, who instead of blocking, he's going to stop. But in this case, the run is the right play. Gib makes the handoff, and Bo Jackson runs for a nice big gain. So again, there were options in the run game, and you like to see that for Ohio State, right? You like to see that development as the game goes on. Luckily, that continued to happen as the game progressed. But what I really thought was impressive here was the ability for Ohio State to make this work. All right, now we also need to talk about the offensive line in the passing game, and because there were similar breakdowns, not quite the same level as the run game, but there are some in the pass. Now this is a four verts concept. It's a 3x1. You got Jeremiah Smith at the top of the screen. He's going to be important, I promise. But it's a very straightforward concept. Four guys spreading the field vertically, right? Now, Purdue's playing at Tampa too, and I want you to just remember that for a little bit later in the video because I promise that'll be important. But that's really not the key here, because what's going to happen is as Sand drops back and he recognizes the coverage, suddenly pressure is going to come. He's got to escape the pocket, which he's been so good, and he's probably made his offensive line stats, I know he has, made look so much better. Meanwhile, he's able to see, scrambling to the side of number 4, great safety blanket to have, who cuts off his route and actually works back to the ball, catches a ball, makes it look super easy along the sideline for a first down, move the chains, right? This is a broken play they turn into a first down. This is what happens. These are champagne problems, right? But let's watch from the end zone and watch happens protection-wise. This is what we call a half slide, where our right side, they're all sliding to the right, and we've got man on man from the right tackle on that defensive end. Really the right guard here, Gabe Van Sickle, he's got the defensive tackle, but that defensive tackle is going to pinch and we're going to get a twist inside, and that's the issue, is the defensive end on the right is going to come over into the A gap. And now Carson Hinsman's doing a good job initially of helping that, protect that A gap, but he can see after he makes that contact, hey, I've got to get off this block and I've got to go take on this, twisting defensive end. But he doesn't see it in time, and he's not ready for it. And that allows this pressure because his defensive end just goes right through the block, gets into the backfield, and creates pressure. Luckily, Sand bails him out. Now, that's the kind of thing we keep seeing. And Ohio State, of course, threw the ball very well in this game. We're actually going to transition a little bit into some of the successes we saw. We're going to end on a high note, if you will, because I think what we saw there was a consistent issue that we've seen across the interior. Last week against Penn State, I showed a pretty terrible miss from Hinsman in the same regard. Similar pass protection, just getting beat. Now, it doesn't mean that this time at least you recognized it, right? What concerns me, though, is the ability to do this consistently and actually then execute. It's one thing to see and identify the opposing defender and understand what they're doing. It's another than turn it around and execute. Now, we've got another great example here of Ohio State doing things well and actually Purdue helping out. And this is a big reason why Ohio State turned out to be successful in this game. What do I mean? We've got, you can see it's a too high shell, and Ohio State's going to run this concept where it's a smash, where it's a hitch outside, a corner route from Jeremiah Smith over the top, and then kind of a follow concept with two digs on the backside. Sand's going to work to the top of the screen, and as he drops back, he's going to notice, okay, this is man coverage. I've got one safety dropping into the middle of the field. Everybody else is playing man. Then you're going to pick your best matchup. What's the one that's going to probably come open against this kind of coverage? That might be the corner route, except this is what we call one double, because they're straight up double teaming Jeremiah Smith. Not the worst idea in the world. So Sand, as he drops back, he realizes I'm not going to be able to hit this corner route to my guy. So now I'm going to hit and turn my hips back. Because it's man coverage, there are windows. He recognizes the first dig route is going to pull that defender out over the middle and leave a giant window for him to throw the ball into to Bryson Rogers. Great throw, great catch. Really moving the ball. Nicely done. Now, Purdue doing their best to kind of take away the first option, but Sand's able to make it work and keep things moving, right? Now, protection-wise, he had all the time in the world here. Why did he have all the time in the world here? Because Purdue helped Ohio State out. We just saw them beat the protection, but for whatever reason, Purdue just continually as the game went on, just only rushed 3, and that made life a lot easier on Ohio State. Even though they were able to run some twists and stunts, you can see them doing that to the right side. They're going to have a little bit of a twist there between the end and the tackle. That's helping Ohio State out. They're able to handle it because it's 3/2. Now you can see Sayin here, right, as he's not even at the top of his drop, and he's already got his eyes downfield. He recognizes that as his back foot hits the ground at the top of that drop, he's already moved his eyes over to that follow concept, right? He sees Innis. He's got that guy's all over Innis, but what Sayin knows is that behind Innis, he's going to have that window to throw into. This is what high-level quarterback play looks like. All right, and the final thing we're going to show today is I'm just going to make a declaration. I implore teams, please stop running Tampa 2 when you see number 4 in the slot. Just don't do it, because as we can see from here, you have the best receiver in the country lined up in a nasty split, and then because of the concept, for whatever reason, the down and distance, Purdue's running a Tampa 2. Which is a decent coverage against, deep concepts. And the concept is pretty simple. There's just 2 hitches or 2 deep curls on the outside, and then Smith's going to run down the middle. The problem with that is who's running with him down the middle. We saw this against Wisconsin, where there's Carnell Tate running a similar route. That's a middle linebacker who's trying to run with Jeremiah Smith. The safeties are too wide to get there, and Sayin has enough time to throw a beautiful ball over the top and make this play. Let's watch it from the end zone here. Really great work. We're going to see just how difficult this is for number 16. Now, this is going to look like a run play, and another reason Ohio State was able to do this because they started calling play action on first down. And again, this pulling from the guard out to the outside edge is going to help sell it. Okay, Purdue thinks this is a run play on first down. The linebackers are held. And again, that linebacker, Jeremiah Smith's running straight downfield. The linebacker who's supposed to be running with him has yet to even turn his hips. So part of that is the play fake. Part of it is just the mismatch of talent right there. Again, a middle linebacker against Jeremiah Smith. Runs a little, post corner or dino post. Looks like a corner route, wide open for the touchdown. Now, when we think about what that means for Ohio State, of course, we've got a number of concepts here that we can dig into, and a lot of positives for them to take away. Again, they were able to make it work and win a game easily. They should have covered the spread. Again, I'm not going to get into spreads. I know this is a hot topic with Dubcast listeners, but they should have been able to cover if not for that backdoor touchdown. There was actually a concept that should have been a touchdown earlier that we didn't go over that because of missed pass protection resulted in an incompletion. Ohio State had to kick a field goal instead of taking a touchdown. Now, these are the types of things for the last time people were, why was this game so infuriating? They ended up having beautiful throws like this last one we showed to Jeremiah Smith. Fair questions, but, again, I'll just repeat myself that this is the type of performance that makes you wonder what's happening in practice during the week. Yes, they were able to round into form. Yes, they were able to make adjustments to what Purdue was doing, but this is not, a defense that's known for its schematic brilliance, right? Barry Odom, of course, is a good defensive coordinator, but this is a guy who's just trying to build some foundations here, much the way Luke Fickell and that Wisconsin defense was just trying to build some foundations a few weeks prior. They're not getting, they're trying to build off of some basic concepts defensively, and it's on the Ohio State coaching staff to prepare the team for them, whether that's practicing the combo blocks against the types of fronts they're going to be facing each week, or just being prepared for, some of the schematic differences. What are we going to call against this? We saw a lot of, extra defenders in the box that seemed to surprise the Ohio State offense. That extra safety just constantly coming down on block. That's not on the offensive line. That's schematic, as Ryan Day even himself called out. And again, it just makes me wonder what's happening in the preparation in the weeks and the days leading up to the game. Now, hopefully this Saturday against UCLA, we see something a little bit different from Ohio State, looking a little bit more prepared, maybe a little bit of a quicker start, which I know the fans are looking for. But as you're looking out for it, don't just pay attention to what happens in the end zone. Typically, that's probably going to be number 4. I want you to keep an eye on that offensive line, and hopefully we're going to be seeing a little bit of development up there and a lot fewer, I should say, missed assignments from especially along the interior. And again, not just 77, but across the entire interior of the offensive line. So we'll be back next week to review that. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you then.